Hi, Professor Noll. Happy
Hi,
Valentine's Day.
Stephanie.
Thank you for sitting down to talk with me today. So, I remember being a student in one of your classes, and you had a presentation that you gave about how to stay married for 50 years. And I thought you'd be the perfect person to speak with, given the holiday that we're celebrating.
Yes.
So, I have some questions from some of the moms in my group. Let's start off with when children come along in a relationship, the dynamics change exponentially. How can couples prepare for that huge life changing experience?
Gotta talk about it a lot ahead of time because it is a huge life changing experience. And couples have to both be on the same page. And you have to have made some plans about how you're going to deal with emergencies that come up. What do we do if the baby gets sick? What do we do if the baby screams all night? What do we do? And you have to have talked it over a lot
Mm,
and made sure that you really are both on the same page about things.
yeah. We hear that postpartum depression happens more often. Do you have any recommendations for someone who is the partner of someone that's experiencing postpartum depression after having a child?
First of all, to recognize it. Um, it isn't always easy to recognize it. Um, I had postpartum depressions after both of my children were born, but I also dropped out of school and we were broke. We were students. We had student stipends that were not real generous. So there were a whole lot of things to be troubled about. And I didn't recognize, even with my own training, I didn't recognize that what I had was depression. Um, so it might be kind of important for the partner to get, I guess it'll be the wife that gets it,
Yeah.
for the partner to find a way to get the wife to go look for help. Um, so when I needed therapy myself, I said to my granddaughters, who had said, everybody should have a therapist.
Mm.
Um, I said, how do you find one? She said, oh, it's easy. You go to Psychology Today and they're all listed. So you look for somebody who takes your insurance and so forth.
Mhm.
And that person should, if it's a psychotherapist, that person may be able to help enough. More likely, medication would help.
Mhm.
Um, Excuse me, just a moment. Hi. Let's wait until somebody's going to a different store, okay? Because I particularly like that one. Okay, thanks. I'm sorry.
Don't worry about it.
Um, so, a good therapist would recognize when the patient needs to see a doctor. Um, Most of the time, you do eventually get over it, but you get over it a lot sooner with help.
Mhm.
Uh, can you pause?
Oh, sure.
Okay, life goes on.
Don't worry about it.
Go ahead.
So, and what if the shoe's on the other foot? Because in my mind, having a partner, being married means being able to support the other when they need it, and then vice versa, support that person that was there for you when you were struggling.
Yes, and I think sharing the caretaking is very important. Um, when we were first married, the wife did all the caretaking of the baby. So when the baby woke up at 2 a.m. and I was exhausted and just couldn't get myself up, my husband said, but it's your baby. He's still embarrassed about that. And he says he wouldn't do that anymore. He would find a way to help. But I think couples nowadays much more have the uh, expectation that the father will help care for the baby as well as the mother, which is pretty important.
Mhm.
So, um, so that kind of support is necessary. Um, Important for the partner to be able to listen to the concerns of the person who's overwhelmed. Mm, but it isn't easy,
Yeah.
you know.
What component do you think is most important in a relationship? Physical, social, or emotional?
That is a really hard thing to say. All of them are important. Um, you have to make sure that you're not giving too much emphasis to any one of them, I think. You have to have friends. Uh, you you should have a love life. One of the unfortunate things that happens to a lot of couples is that they stop making love after the baby's born
Mm.
and try to avoid doing that. um, and be supportive to the other person. But having a new baby in the house is hard for the husband too. So so they need to lead to listen to each other, to find out what are the other one's concerns, what are the things the other one needs. But I wouldn't say any one of those was more important than the others.
Right. Well, there's a saying that you need to keep dating your spouse, but given that we're living in a unique circumstance and not everyone's comfortable going out to eat, do you have any suggestions for trying to keep the spark alive during
Well,
quarantine?
well, what you're doing when you're dating is that you're putting yourself in a place where you are paying attention only to each other. That's what it is about dating. And it doesn't have to be in a restaurant. It could be just about anywhere. Um, the back bedroom, the lobby, the the garage. Go for a ride. Talk to each other. The important thing is to spend time paying attention only to each other and talking. My husband says he realized he was in love with me when he was reading Nietzsche, of all people.
Oh,
Said, think of love as a lifetime conversation. And he said, that's it. I still want to be talking to her at breakfast when she's 80. Well, I'm about to get there. But we do. We talk all the time. Um, the nice thing about a restaurant is that often, you're seated in a booth or someplace that has some sense of privacy about it. Uh, there's often a light, that kind of highlights this is an interaction between you and me. But you can create that anyway. Um, you can watch a TV show together that you both like. The big issue is really focusing your attention on the other person.
mhm. So, the presentation that I mentioned earlier that you give to your students, How to Stay Married for 50 Years.
Actually, I think it's how to stay in love for 50 years.
Yeah, How to Stay in Love. That's right. That's right. There's a distinction. If you could give an elevator pitch, what would be your like quick sound bite? What is the thesis? Like, what's the main point of how to do it? Do you think?
It's respect for each other. It's respect and showing affection to each other. Now, at the time that Gary got asked the question that prompted me to write this presentation,
Yeah.
um, somebody had said to him, how do you stay in love for a long time? So he thought about it and he said, well, when you think of something you like about your partner, tell them about it. If you think about something you don't like,
Mhm.
hmm, hold your tongue. You might not have to say
Yeah.
that. So, uh, don't be overly critical, but do praise what your partner does that's worthwhile.
Mhm.
Um, And all of marriage is a negotiation, and that's, you don't ever get to stop negotiating.
Mhm.
You haven't ever totally made it. You still, even though we've been married 57 and a half years, and you still have to negotiate, what your needs are and what the other person needs to do to help you, and vice versa.
Mhm. Uh, that leads to my next question. Is it normal to fall out of love with your partner or to love each other at different times? What have you seen in your experience?
Well, this has been my experience, but I thought it was interesting that the minister at one of my daughter's marriages said that,
Yeah.
her wedding, said, sometimes it'll seem as though the love has gone away, but if you work at it, you can bring it back. And I think I said to you before that when one partner is depressed, that makes it feel like you don't love the other person anymore, because when you're depressed, you don't love anybody.
Mhm.
So you have to always look at that possibility. But yes,
Mhm.
if you do the right things, if you respect your partner, if you try to help them out, if you give them a lot of praise and appreciation, uh, the love will come back.
So now this question I just came up with on the fly, but how long before you call it quits? I mean, there's only such a span of time where you're not feeling it for the person that you have to maybe call into question, maybe it's over. How do you determine that?
Well, of course, a lot of it depends on whether children are involved.
Mhm.
Um, Unless the children are being really harmed by the relationship, you should keep working at it.
Mhm.
Um, if one partner is doing something really unforgivable, like beating the other one up,
Yeah.
uh, then I think you consider separating, because for the children to even see that is really bad for them. If one partner is addicted, you kind of need to get the children out of that situation.
Yes.
Um, but if there are only two people, if there are only two of you, and one of you is doing something unforgivable, spending all the family finances without asking, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
then you really have to consider, would you be, and I think the advice columnists always say, would you be better off without them or with them?
Hmm.
And I think it depends partly on what your resources are. Nowadays, when most women have jobs, they can afford to separate from somebody more easily than they could when I was young,
Mhm.
because when I was young, women didn't usually have independent income.
Mhm. Right.
Does
Wow.
that answer the question?
Yes, it does. What have you been up to lately? Are you still teaching at UIC?
Oh, I would love to be, but what happened was that I was finding it harder and harder to learn the material. And I thought, and I was too tired. We were commuting 4 hours each day that we went in and out.
Mhm.
Um, and so we decided, we're in our 70s, that probably retirement is acceptable.
Mhm.
So we retired. Um, but I was really having trouble with some cognitive things. And ultimately, it turned out I had this strange condition called normal pressure hydrocephalus, which the pressure isn't normal. There's pressure on your brain from too much cerebrospinal fluid that's not draining.
Mhm.
So I had to get a shunt put in to drain my brain, which was miraculous.
Yeah.
It didn't make me the person I was when I was 40, but it certainly brought me back 10 or 15 years anyway, in terms of what I could do.
Yeah.
Um, we we are members of our church, and we're involved in some of their activities. My daughter has a book club, and I read the books for the book club. And my husband went to a couple of the meetings and said, none of the guys go to those meetings. So he decided he would read the books but not go to the meetings.
Oh,
Somebody else that I heard said, we called it a book club, but we really ought to call it a wine club because that's what we do. But
yeah.
it's intellectual stimulation, though, and that's good. Uh, when, well, even now, if the weather isn't bad,
Mhm.
uh, we try to go for a walk almost every day. We live about 2 blocks from Wilder Park, which is a very nice park in the middle of Elmhurst. Um, we used to live right next door to the Prairie Path, way out west, and that was a wonderful place to go for a walk. Um, woodsy and all that kind of thing. But the problem is, now that people are locked up, they're desperate to get out, and you see lots of people on the path who are not masking.
Yeah, yeah.
And that makes it really not very safe to go.
Mhm.
But there's usually enough space in Wilder Park that we can walk around in the park and
That's good.
do that. Um, then there are just always the usual things that need to be done.
Mm.
Um, right now, my husband's sharpening a pair of scissors that my father ruined, that that my daughter has, and my
Mhm.
husband's trying to make it so that they'll cut again. I don't know what was wrong. I mean, my father was an engineer, but he didn't realize that with scissors, you're not sharpening it like a knife. You want one side to be flat.
Yeah.
So he's repairing that. Oh goodness, parts of me are disappearing. Uh,
Yes, that's the nature
that's the
of
trouble with the
the yeah.
virtual background.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Um, what else do we do? Well, before the pandemic, we traveled a lot, a
Mhm.
lot. Um, our great niece got married in Sweden 2 summers ago, and we gathered up the whole family and took them, and that was great. Um, we've often done. We've traveled a lot since the children grew up and left home.
Mhm.
Um, usually camping.
Camping,
Now,
ooh.
my kids are not interested in camping, but when we were first married, we had no money, so we couldn't go stay in resorts or hotels or motels or any place like that. So we went camping, and we love going camping.
And you guys met when you were very young initially, right?
Yes. Yeah, I was 11 and he was 13.
And you were both in band, but different classes, right?
We were both in band, yeah, and he played the drums and I played the flute.
Oh, cool.
But the real thing that happened, we come from a very small hometown.
Mm,
It had a population of 3,000 when we were young. Now it's 2,000.
mm.
Um, and among other things, when you come from a small town, you do all kinds of things to entertain each other. So my parents were in a local theater group, and Gary was in the theater group, and that was where I really got to know him. Because I'd go to the rehearsals with my parents, and there was this really neat guy. So um,
And you're still crazy about each other today.
yeah, took me 6 years to nail him down. He didn't know what that was all about. Why was this weird girl following him around?
Mhm.
Um,
That's sweet.
but when we got into college, um, I ran into him in the library, and he was not in good shape. He was depressed,
Mhm.
and I decided I had to do something about it. So that's what I did, and he got better, and then he decided he loved me after all.
That's good. Well, thank you for answering all these questions. And thank you for being an inspiration too. I feel like more people should be hearing stories like yours because it's hard work staying in love. It really
It
is.
is hard work staying in love, and that's the thing people forget. And I hear people say, well, I just don't love him anymore, so I'm going to get a divorce. And I think, you are saying, give me a lonely, unhappy old age.
Yeah.
It's really worth the effort to make it work.
Yeah.
It's also worth the effort to have made sure you are marrying the right person in the first place, in the first place.
Yeah. That's for sure. Get it right the first time. Listen to our instincts is probably a good piece of advice, to listen to your instincts.
Yeah, and um, I know people who get married because they want the big party, girls in particular. Big party, princess for a day, doesn't last. You've got to have something else going on there. So we always say we're each other's best friend.
Yeah.
One of the things about the lockdown is if you're going to be locked up with somebody, it should be your best friend.
Yes.
So
That's perfect. We should all marry our best friend, basically.
we should all marry our best friend. Absolutely. And people say, oh, I can't date him or her because we're friends. That's a really good basis for a relationship.
Yes. Awesome. Well, take care, and I will definitely keep in touch with you.
Thank you. And I would love to know what all is going on with you guys too.
Thank you so
So
much for your time.
you're welcome.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.